So this one's set in Mexico in the 1980s, and it's about a museum robbery. But where most heist movies build up to the heist, this one doesn't. They show almost none of the planning, and basically just jump right into it. There's about 30 minutes of character introduction before the robbery, but most of the movie actually deals with the events after the heist. So it's more about these two characters than the actual robbery. And these two guys aren't really happy with how things are going in their lives. And they have greater aspirations. So of course they decide to rob the Anthropology Museum, where there's a ton of Mayan artifacts and other valuable stuff. It's apparently a true story too, and the details are supposed to be somewhat accurate, at least when it comes to the robbery. The later parts are a bit more fictionalized. But anyway, they decide to rob the place, and after that, let's just say things don't necessarily go according to plan. And I sorta liked this movie, but the further into it got, the less it held my interest. It starts off strong and for a while there things are going well, but then it slowly starts to meander a bit. It sorta loses steam toward the end. It doesn't feel very focused. And it almost feels like there wasn't really a 2-hour movie in this story. It doesn't really build up to anything either, and comes off as sorta anticlimactic. There's a bit of an arc for the main character, but it didn't really feel that authentic for some reason. It didn't feel like he'd earned it, because he's not a great guy. He's pretty flawed, and the more flawed a character is, the more emphasis and work you need to put into developing him as a character. But this just came across as a bit rushed and lazy, to be honest. And I try to avoid reading too much of what other people think about movies before I review them, just to give you my impression and not have it tainted by others' opinions. But I happened to see someone say that the movie didn't feel very satisfying. And I think that pretty much sums it up. It just falls short in that department. It's not a bad movie, it's actually pretty well made, and I liked a lot of things about it. It looks good, it's well shot, the acting's really solid, and there's some depth to it too, don't get me wrong. They do get into the character motivations and the main guy's relationship with his family. They even get into the cultural significance of a theft like this, basically stealing cultural artifacts. And they get into the whole history of museums, and how they got their artifacts in the first place, and who's really the thief. It's a pretty complicated issue actually, and they do get into that a little bit. But overall the story just didn't end up being that satisfying. It lacked something, and I'm not sure what, but something was missing. But again, it's not a bad movie by any stretch. It's well made and perfectly enjoyable. But it could have been a bit more focused, and the end needed to wrap it up in a more satisfying way. And I honestly wouldn't have minded if they dug more into the whole cultural aspect either, what those artifacts mean to the people, and dug more into the whole world of treasure hunting. And who should the treasures actually belong to? A museum or the guy who found it? Or maybe the country of origin? There's a lot of stuff there that you could get into, and it could have added more depth to the movie, because I liked those parts a lot. I thought they were really interesting, and if there's a message in this movie, I think it has to do with that. So it's a bit of a shame they didn't really put more focus on that. But that's about it. It's a good movie, but it could have been better. So would I recommend it? Sure. It's not a must-see or anything. It's just a perfectly enjoyable heist movie. So maybe check it out, maybe don't. I'm not your disappointed father. But I am trying to sell out, so consider liking, subbing, hitting that bell and supporting me on Patreon. Because I really need to get myself some Mayan artifacts. And hey, why not drop a comment below or check out another review? I'd appreciate it. Thanks.